So, welcome back everyone to our session of the day. This session we will discuss harnessing cooperation for environmental sustainability in the Bay of Bengal. This session will focus on the challenges posed by climate change and consequent rising sea levels on the political economy and security of the Bay of Bengal. Rapid exploitation of resources, unsustainable farming, and fishing practices, as well as pollution, are anthropogenic activities that challenge the stability and prosperity of the Bay of Bengal. They are also counterintuitive in the fight against climate change, which adversely threatens the livelihood and lives of the littoral communities in the region. The session is intended to address the issue areas that threaten environmental sustainability by strengthening consensus for regional cooperation in the Bay of Bengal. Now, this session will be moderated by Ms. Sharon Susan Koshi, who is a research associate at the Center for Public Policy Research, CPPR. She completed her master's in IR and political science from Central University of Kerala and MPhil in political science from the University of Hyderabad. For her MPhil thesis, she explored the themes of state and feminist negotiation in post-Arab Spring Egypt. Sharon had also secured the UGC Junior Research Fellowship during her research period in University of Hyderabad and IIT Madras. Warm welcome to our moderator, Ms. Sharon Susan Koshi. We welcome to the stage also our panelist, Mr. Ibrahim Naeem. And warm welcome to our other panelist, Mr. S.A. Naidu. The session to you, Ms. Sharon.
This eminent panelists and this room full of enthusiastic thought leaders, especially on a topic that is very pertinent and riddling our region and the world as a whole. Despite many of the global conventions that are in place to tackle climate change, we are still far along from achieving the change in the global temperature to tap the global increase in global temperature under 1.5 degrees Celsius. As you've all known by now, we just finished the COP7, COP27 and CITES in Panama. And the world has been thinking and giving more attention towards climate change more than ever. And this is rightfully so because increasingly climate change is affecting the livelihoods of coastal communities and small island developing nations. And the world leaders are slowly warming up to the consequences of these climate change induced threats. So in this panel, to give you an overview of what the grounds that we'll be covering, we'll be talking about climate-induced threats. We'll also go over how IOU fishing and deep-sea trawling is affecting the Bay of Bengal region in particular. We'll also see how marine litter, debris, plastic pollution is affecting life underwater and above water, which also reflects on the carbon sequestration capacities of the ocean water. More increasingly, the attention has been given in the past decade or so to the livelihood options of coastal communities. In the panels that preceded this one, we had talked about how blue economy is an important plan to think about and how fishermen communities, small fishermen communities especially, have to be given the due diligence when you are mapping national policies and local government policies. So this panel would also shed light on how these communities can be integrated into policy changes and policy recommendations because, rather than a top-down approach, it is always good to have a bottom-up approach to these issues which actually affect the very existence of many of these communities. With that, I would like to introduce our eminent panelists for the day. We have with us Mr. Ibrahim Naeem from Maldives. He's the Director General of the Environment Protection Agency of Maldives. He was also the director of SARC Coastal Zone Management Center from May 2013 until December 2015. His main work covers coastal zone management and natural resources management. He's also a registered environmental impact assessment consultant. We also have with us today Dr. S.A. Naidu, who's a project assistant with the Ministry of Earth Sciences, National Center for Coastal Research in Chennai. His research interests include health of ecosystems in the Eastern Arabian Sea and coastal Bay of Bengal, as well as climate change, food web dynamics, marine microplastic contamination in aquatic ecosystems. For discussion, the format of the session is as follows. We'll have 10 minutes each for each panelist to give an introductory remark on the topic of discussion today. Then we'll go on to a discussion among the panelists, and then we'll open up the session for Q&A interaction with the audience. May I request Dr. Naidu to please give the introductory remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Naidu from National Center for Coastal Research, Ministry of Earth Sciences from Chennai. So, first of all, I'm very much thankful to this CPPR giving me this opportunity to share a few of my thoughts in this regard. Is very much crucial aspect of this, the security of the Bay of Bengal with reference to these climate change aspects, how these ecosystems are impacting by these man-made activities or natural issues also many more are there. And let us speak about first what we have to know something what is happening in this ocean we have to know the first. So this is some kind of as a some researcher I can think about much more on some oceanic process. Now morning onwards, many speakers has been spoke about. So the economy, blue economy, as well as marine spatial planning, security, and other trading, these all aspects. Now, first of all, why ocean is important? That as everyone knows that around half of the world's oxygen is produced from the oceans, tiny microscopic plants, which are the small planktons. And after that, as far as the climate concern, from the atmosphere, more than 50 times more carbon dioxide, which is a sinking to the ocean. So ocean is a good sink actually for the carbon dioxide. That's what the climate is regulating. Typical temperature in this, the atmosphere or average temperature 15 degrees centigrade when we compare with other planets, how it is maintaining because of this ocean. So that's what the disturbances we are losing now. So what is happening? The disturbance is increasing. We are losing the capacity, whatever the buffering capacity, these all aspects. And what we are getting that everything we are getting from the oceans. What now? Food as well as minerals, energy, medicine, other transportations, all aspects we are getting from that. In addition to that, now as that 1.41 billions of our population, your India is keep on increasing around 1.6 as per the projections 2048. So if this is the things happens in the world population itself, whenever you look at that any populated country, any country in the world which is around the coastal belt, all populated cities, because that much importance is there in the ocean or coastal cities. So we are giving a tremendous pressure on that because of our needs and demands, and these all our activities are keep on increasing. We have to sustain. For that, we are giving a tremendous pressure on the oceans. So these are the complex and severe threat which is identified by the global forums and all UNESCO, IUCN in United Nations or UNDP or global ocean programs like a Goose or Pogo or European Union. Everyone is targeted on the specific issues such as a pollution. Pollution is the various kinds of pollutions, right? Oil pollution, nutrient pollution, metal pollution, whereas a chemical pollution, plastic pollution, and a number of pollutions are there. Now, which are tremendously increasing on that. Similarly, our ocean keep on getting deoxygenated. So the ocean oxygen concentrations are decreasing. Why they are decreasing? How they are decreasing? Which time it is decreasing? How much concentration is persistent in the ocean? And what is the thickness of the oxygen levels are decreasing the zones? How they are spreading? Once again, 50 around 1960s. Now hundreds of dead zones are increasing around, and recently one of the study has been stated that our Bay of Bengal also became a dead zone, which means this going to the hypoxic state, which is where this 90 micromoles of carbon dioxide, sorry, oxygen is available, that typically termed as a hypoxia. So that kind of consequences is a negative impact on this biota, not only biota but also other the biological process. For example, this bacterial degradation of the organic matter in the ocean then enhances the carbon dioxide in the, and at the same time the dissolved inorganic carbon saturation levels can changes. So ocean is keep on is acting as a acidic nature, keep on getting acidified, then this is the negative consequences on the coral reefs as well as that other the carbon system, it is a disturbing or collapsing. And at the same time, when that more amount of carbon is emitting and poison fuels or these all aspects, what is happening into that trapping of this oceanic temperature, global is warming, and consequently that glaciers are melting and again sea level rising and unwanted that cyclone formations or intensities are increasing, or this kind of the phenomena are happening. So this is one of the thing, global warming. When the global is warming, ocean is also heating up, and again the absorbing capacity of the ocean heat, again it is transferred into this atmosphere. That is another negative consequences to the formation of the cyclones. Now everywhere we are seeing the floods. Last time in the Chennai floods, after Kerala floods, and recently in the Bangalore, everywhere because of this unwanted, unexpected, these cyclones. And after that, the another thing is that morning someone has stated that one of the sir that deep ocean mining and these all aspects. Yes, deep ocean mining, this is the crucial impact on this ecosystem. But the thing is that as our Indian government particularly concerned about this oceanic system, as I am the Minister of Earth Sciences, our Minister of Earth Sciences from India is the major role in the DAM project, Deep Ocean Mission. In this project, we much concerned about that how the biodiversity is existing. If some kind of disturbances comes, how the ecosystem is responding, and what level that is the so the short-term impact or long-term impact we does not know. Since the developed countries like American or European countries have been started this the mining aspect, these all studies. Now we are in the form actually how to extract these resources. It is a boost up this blue economy. But however, as per our Indian government concern, we cannot take up this any resources or something without testing that what scientific knowledge, scientific based knowledge. We cannot remove this any things, of course. And at the same time, so our fishing, as everyone knows that that trawl ban periods are there. Government is encouraging because of some certain period when we are banning this one, that ban when we ban that fishing, obviously the fish populations can be increases. So that's what actually what we are doing. And at the same time, see, this is the environmental sustainability. All this the government or intergovernmental organizations in the worldwide has been noted that these are the the main programs to sustainable our ocean. We have to get from the ocean all benefits. Because of these programs we are strengthening of these things. These are the programs: blue economy, sustainable developmental goals, marine spatial planning, coastal protection, resources utilization, marine strategy framework, biodiversity strategy, ocean accounting and regulation. All so many aspects, we all these are things to improve our knowledge on the oceans. This is the typical, as everyone knows that oceans having potic layer, apotic layer, where the that light is penetrating potic layer. So around after 200 meters, light cannot penetrate. Where the light is penetrating on this layer, all amount of organic matter production taking place, which means huge amount of oxygen is producing. So that oxygen is entering into the atmosphere. So the keep on exchanging takes place from the atmosphere and ocean. So these cycles we need to study much more, and at the same time you see the how the population, some kind of microscopic planktons and zooplanktons which are eaten by the fishes, and fish will be more amount based on the when this this biota is more in the ocean. The typical picture, Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal in this northern Indian Ocean. There's a monsoon time and non-monsoon time, the response. These are the simple concept where the more amount of water entered into the oceans, that is that one surface layer will be occupied with the fresh water, and there is no exchange takes place with the water between surface waters and the mid waters, which is arstic, right, which is something kind of layers, that is called a stratification layer. Now, after that, the coastal ecosystem, as I mentioned earlier, seaways and pollution, so many things coming from this land as well as this from the atmosphere. These nutrients, such as a nutrient pollution, as I said, now everyone is thinking about the nitrogen and phosphorus and budgets. This nitrogen, phosphorus, what we are using either agricultural or the man-made other activities or industries or companies, we are dumping into the oceans some kind of in regulations though it is, but still entering. This is a consequences unwanted growth of plankton, that is called a bloom. Phytoplanktons enormously increased in the microscopic plants. One drop of water, thousands of lakhs of cells we can found. So that is called a bloom. This bloom comes the negative consequences, and it is consuming entire oxygen in the oceanic system. So that's what it is very much important. Now this is the ocean, and aerosols another concept. Everywhere the microscopic and small particles is there, that particles dumping on the oceans, even the not only the coastal ocean but also offshore where the deep ocean side which is entering the particles and enhancing there also the blooms. Because of these blooms, what is happened, different kinds of blooms, you see different colors is there, each bloom having different color. See that some are green color, some are red color, some are yellow color, or so many colors. These all blooms which are unwanted growth of planktons, and decaying this plankton after consuming the oxygen, and at the same time when the fish consumes these things which are toxins which can produce, then the fish mortality is happening place. This is the things happening way back in 1950s onwards in the our Arabian Sea, much more prominent in this coast, this blooms, several blooms, hundreds of blooms were noticed. And at the same time in the Bay of Bengal also recently some couple of blooms have been noticing. So what it is indicating that blooms are extending in the ocean. So the ocean security aspect, when we can talk about these resources, the biological resources such as the fishes, which is depend on our, that economy. And this is the thing is happening in the Kerala last time it happens, and the mortality of the fish mortality published in this Nakvi et al. If some of the nature also which have been published some of these reports. And what is happening in the, you see, when this oxygen is there, more oxygen than the production also of course, and huge number of fish is there in the entire water column. Whereas moderately oxygen and intensify the depleting oxygen, you see the down entire the bottom layer, entire the bottom layer oxygen is decreased. So that's what happened, the source of the whatever the fishes which are disappearing or migrating, then fishery people are not getting that the fish populations for their growth, for their sustain. And at the same time, this is somewhat study which I have done it, and in these conditions some of the organisms are sustaining with the which are called oxygen tolerant species. After that, overall biogeochemistry is entirely impacting on that hydrosphere, biosphere, as well as these all spheres, the atmospheres, it's all are interlinked. This, how that system is disturbing, you see, somewhere in this somewhere in this atmosphere, carbon dioxide is entering into the oceans from the deep ocean. It is coming to the the high latitude to the deep oceans. It is coming, and again it is a negative consequences on our regions, because deep ocean mass is something like 2000 3000 meters. This waters can move around, and after as a conveyor belt, entire ocean is just charming up. So that's what is the more important in Indian Ocean regions. And at the same time, another concern about the plastic, microplastics and marine litter. This is a one more important concept, and now the global concern much more in that 80% and 20% in the land and sea based respectively. And there are several sources, of course, cities, harbors, industries, rivers, sea, all our sources are coming. And these are typically termed as a microplastics less than 5 mm, and as a small microplastics also there, 1 micron to even 1000 microns, and at the same time meso and macro and several, and more than 25 centimeters or millimeters we can term as after that this marine debris, the macro debris. These all things are negatively consequences, and once they enter into the oceans, what is happening? Because of the currents or waves or tides, these are going into the entire ocean. Something is the plastic is enter, it not maybe it is a common from the Indian side or the Bangladesh side or Sri Lanka side, because of the ocean currents is the major impact. Since you see that South Pacific Ocean gas or these all things guys which are formed. And recently also noticed that even in the Bay of Bengal also down around 30 to 40 in north, if you look at there also near in that Australian side, we have found some of that some reports are there, Bay of Bengal guide also there. All plastic is somewhere it is going and dumping down. Finally, what is happening? These are some of the studies from the European studies, Gazi et al. From France and other some of the Belgian studies. People have been done marine litter mostly in the deep ocean. So these are the things, some of them. And if this is the concern takes place, yes, sorry. This is the concern is takes place, and 2050 our fish populations, what about? More plastic is there than the fish. And this is the fate of the plastic in the marine ecosystem, transferring the chemicals. And after that in the Indian Ocean is much more crucial, because recently Nature and Science papers, these papers was published by this Jambak et al. As well as Libertine et al. They noticed and they are stated that our ocean, particularly Indian Ocean side, is a much more concerned, more amount of the plastic emissions coming, they said. But we don't know, but without the scientific knowledge, without the time series observations, how can we agree how much plastic is there in the ocean? Ultimately, what I want to say is that ecological, economical, and social impact by these plastics were. So what we can do, ban we have, and of course many countries now realize that they are banned. And morning one of the madam has been mentioned that even though we have banned, because we did a mistake in that we did not notice this much problem, no one aware of that. But even though we have stopped these all mitigation actions, the existence of the plastic in the ocean, it's something like the years together. It's not possible to that stop it at that point time. And R&D is important, and clean seas and NGO support, government support, many things should be required, and new technologies, and also that bioplastic should be used, and more of the motivation on the specialist side people. We need to explain in the local languages what are the consequences and what kind of gas they are using, and these all things. And these are some of the science based aspect, and as a scientist some of the things we have been identified of the gaps and source mechanism, toxicity, long term and short term impacts, and finally how it is entering in the food web, what is the residence time, and how much they are transferring in one system to another system, whether it's really impacting on our human health or not. This is another question. So yeah, these are the some of the important things for our sustainability of the ocean. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I took, I think, somewhat more time. Thank you.
I think one tends to be more passionate, especially when talking about environment. Now, may I invite Mr. Naeem to give his introductory remarks.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank FNF and CPPR for giving me and the Moldavian colleagues this opportunity to participate in this very important event. So I also thank my co-panelist Dr. Naidu for giving a very scientific introduction of the bay and what is happening in the bay. So I'm not going to repeat that. That make my life easier. My presentation is, it is very important that this region consists of like 1/4 or 1/5 of the population, and a lot of economic activities are going on in this region. Harnessing cooperation is very important. In this presentation, I will try to elaborate what is actually happening in the region and what can be done. The first thing that we need to understand here is the impacts of climate change and sea level rise on the Bay of Bengal and its associated countries. As you see, the sea level rise is associated with coral bleaching and ocean acidification, and there's also El Nino related fisheries issues regarding that climate change. When you look at the coastal erosion, as you can see in that picture, Maldives is already losing land due to coastal erosion related to climate change and adverse impacts of the storm surges. And there's also the saline intrusion associated with climate change and sea level rise. As you may see in the picture, some islands get inundated almost every year due to storm surges. And regarding the plastic pollution that we are supposed to highlight during today's session, it is as you have heard from my colleague, we expect more plastic in the ocean if business as usual continues in 2050 than fish. So we don't want to have that projection being realized. That's why so many countries are doing now, taking stringent measures to fight with plastic pollution. Maldives has banned so many types of small marine single-use plastics, and we will be banning most of the plastics probably in 2024, yeah. The impact of plastic is can be, you can you have heard from Dr. Naidu, it's impacting the environment as well as the marine life, and it's impacting the economy. Like if you think of the Maldives, it's impacting the tourism and the fisheries, and it's also going into the food chain and ultimately coming into our blood. So the plastic pollution and marine debris is very important issue in this region to be highlighted. And the other important theme for today's panel is the discussion of the overfishing and the IUU. There is the illegal, unregulated fishing and the trolling. Trolling is banned in the Maldives, and the purse nets are also banned in the Maldives. But in this region, so many areas, trolling and net fishing still continues, which are very damaging to the fish stock. And it also impacts other aquatic life which are not targeted. And as you see, the nets are dragged at the bottom. You may see in the picture, it has a very huge impact on the benthic environment, the bottom environment. And there's another thing that we need to consider with regard to illegal fishing is the poaching. Poaching can be very dangerous actually, because it involves one country's fishermen going into other country's territory and confronting with the military, and sometimes, as you know, that may be very dangerous. So we have to come up with ways to minimize poaching. What is actually triggering poaching is due to the degradation of the environment and the fish stocks in the home area. That triggers fishermen to go further and intrude into other people's territory. And as you see, this region is experiencing habitat destruction at an alarming rate on the coastal areas and even in the high seas. High seas, you may not be seeing the impacts, but the fish stocks are going down. That's a huge impact actually to the local livelihood and the economy. As the livelihood goes down, you will be expecting more turbulent communities and more uh, prone to the community is more prone to the activities of illegal activities. So it is very important we tackle this overfishing and IUU uh, measures in this region with the help of our established institutions, and if we need, we have to establish more institutions to deal with these type of measures. And the other topic of interest is the food and water security. This region, as you know, is the home for 1/5 of the population, and the environment being getting depleted. The if you think of the marine or coastal environment, you see the depleted resources, the coastal forests being cut, and the coral reefs and marine environment getting dumped with garbage, and marine waterways and coastal rivers getting flooded with garbage. Also, there are with regard to water security, there are issues of people in the up building dams, and the countries who are on the bottom end, they are deprived from water. Those type of things are happening not only in this region, but it is happening all around the world due to, I would say, vested interests. And the change in the weather patterns and climate patterns in this region is evident, which causes sometimes or too much rain or too much long droughts, which can be detrimental to the economies of the countries in this region. And as this region is always prone to the natural disasters, early warning and prevention is very important. We have noticed that the frequency and intensity of the events, extreme events, are getting increased, as it has been highlighted in the IPCC reports. And the area is more prone due to the population density, and the level of living standard is not that high in this region. Most of the places, especially in the coastal areas, the living standard is high, and the resilience of those communities living on the coastal area is low. So natural disasters actually create havoc in most of our coastal areas. Almost every year, many typhoons and inundations, and sometimes now we are getting more frequent earthquakes and potential tsunami warnings as well. These things, we need to work together, and we need to harness cooperation to deal with these issues. Otherwise, one country trying to deal alone any of these matters will not produce any good results. And that's why cooperation is needed. Why cooperation is needed? Some countries in the region are doing some things very good, while other countries are not doing the same thing as good as the first country. So we can always learn from others and get information from others what they are doing and what have failed in that country. And one very important thing we have to consider is the living things, they don't recognize borders, they don't have any passport, and they keep on traveling, and we can't even stop them easily, especially the highly migratory species like tuna, and sometimes even you consider hilsha, it's moving from Bangladesh to India and India to Bangladesh, and if one country is trying to manage that, that will not work. And one another thing that is mentioned even today morning is people or countries working in isolation less, in, as I have mentioned, in silo type management. That's very counterproductive. We need to work together, and management strategy for the Bay of Bengal is very important. A strategy that everybody can agree and then implement, that is very important. And I think that's the end of my talk, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nayan. I have a few follow-up questions to both our panelists, especially given your expertise in environment-related regions, and you represent Bay of Bengal, both from countries that are actually at the brunt of climate change related threats. One thing when you were talking about sea lane intrusion that I related with was how increasingly those news have become very common in Kerala. And also in the Bay of Bengal coasts, this has become a riddling worry for a lot of coastal communities. So, do you see examples from Maldives that we can replicate in other parts of Bay of Bengal, integrating local communities for many of these, changes? Because, like I said, sometimes top-down approach may not be the ideal way to go about it.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Maldives is quite different from the continental land masses, as we have very small and very low-lying islands. Like the islands are just 1 meter above the sea level. Intrusion of saline waters is quite common in Maldives. And what we do is mostly building very expensive breakwaters around the island that may be very difficult for other countries to have because their borders are very long, they have long distance to cover. So in that case, what we do in our country may be applicable to the island environments, may not be very much applicable to the continental land masses. But I think for the countries like India, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, they can actually have their coastal forests and the seagrass beds more. If they can keep them more healthy, that will be of very great help to reduce the saline intrusion. What we do Maldives is quite expensive and very expensive.
Thank you, Mr. Naing. My next question is about how you highlighted the importance of scientific study when it comes to gauging the frequency and the gravity of the threats caused by marine debris and plastic pollution. Yeah. So, question is, what are some of the tech-based solution or scientific solutions or methods of study that organizations can adopt uh, in working together with the government in finding solutions to these issues of plastic pollution and marine debris?
Yeah. And now there are some technologies already people, even of course, buoyancy. Each plastic having first of all, buoyancy capacity. So salinity, which is that water, salty water having the more density. So plastics are floating on that because they have the less density. So what we have to know that sometimes this plastics also getting more and more density because of this association of these particles and planktons or dead cells. They are sinking down. Now we have a mechanism, some kind of, we can terminology in scientific way, we can say, ballistic mechanism. So that is called the particle-particle association sinking down. So this kind of based on the methodology. Now there are some institutes and some kind of technological innovations came, and particles association or biofouling type material, and they are sinking down such a way. Actually now they are trying some kind of mechanisms are there in the scientific manner. And another one has that, as far as concerning that letter based aspect, only the source where it is, identify the source based on that 80% what we are telling in from that land based sources. Exactly, we know that basic part is the river. From the river where the so it is going that plastic because of the management. So where we are doing and dumping or taking some kind of mitigation action, whatever the management, that is the, I think, much more important. Such a way, first we have to stop at the point source, and at the same times even a maritime aspect, of course our navy aspect or other our shipping industries, they are taking much more care about on that. Yeah, of course they are also now arresting this plastic enter amount from the ocean, I think. Yeah.
One more question. One more question, and we'll open the floor for discussion, interaction. Uh, Mr. Nain, could you, since you've also been an active participant in international conventions relating to climate change and environment conservation, you must know the importance of climate financing for many of these climate related initiatives. So, could you shed some light on what is the current state of conversations regarding climate financing, regionally as well as globally?
Yeah, that's a very good and important question. The negotiations and the talks are always going on, but on the ground, very little activities are being done. The climate financing and the carbon trading is very new, and very few people still know how to get into it and how to prepare a credit transfer mechanism. It's also very complicated, and the developing countries still struggling to make proposals. So for the countries who are carbon negative, they can always sell their credits to the more emitting countries. The opportunities are there, and some of the bigger emitters are looking for partnerships. Like we have been approached by the Japanese companies to have a joint credit mechanism so that they can offset their carbon emission through the Maldives is not emitting that much of carbon, so we still have some on our hand that we can sell. That type of negotiations are going on, and we had one or two small projects of carbon offsets in the Maldives. That is, I think, on one of the islands, they were making renewable energy project. Yeah, and now also there are another group of companies from Japan. They are in consultation with the government and the local parties for another project uh, that is also mostly on the renewable energy, because the greater emitters are always looking for partners who have uh, credits on their hand. I think the countries like Bhutan also can utilize this credit mechanism platform. When since the Bhutan is carbon negative, they have a lot of opportunity for them to sell to the emitters, and you can develop your energy sector through that. So opportunities are there, and it's slowly moving. But as I have told you before, it is still very complicated and a very lengthy mechanism. Thank you.
Dr. Naik. Dr. Naidu, so the last question before we open it for interaction is how climate change is affecting the food web dynamics, particularly with reference to Gulf of Mannar, because this is increasingly an issue that we face with our neighbor Sri Lanka, where fishermen are increasingly crossing over uh, water boundaries without their knowledge, of course. Uh, Particularly, and one of the reasons that are cited is because of the low fish catch in the region. So, how is climate change really working in this? How is it responsible for food web change in food web dynamics?
Yeah. As per the science concern and our region where the Gulf of Mannar, first of all, the Gulf of Mannar, particularly one of the important, sector in the coral reef, where the high biodiversity. Now, there is a paper on that, even from NIO in the Kochi National Institute of Oceanography. Dr. Jyoti Babu et al. Has been published that paper. So, why Gulf of Mannar is paradise, biological paradise, which means high amounts of biodiversity is there in the Gulf of Mannar. Now, as you said that, yes, fishes population. Fish population, I cannot say it is a declined there, but the thing is that we have prohibited, actually, our Indian government has been and not allowing that area to disturb. Already that is the zone exactly high number of biodiversity. We have a number of records also. We have a lot of species, new species are there. Then why we have to disturb? And another thing, coral reef area obviously highly protected area from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. They won't at all agree to this kind of activities, even especially people wherever they want to go and fish in some areas, they won't be allowed. Now, another thing aspect you said the climate change. Yes, the ocean, what I said earlier, keep on getting acidified. So acidic nature is increasing. So the amount of when the acidic nature is increasing, obviously, I mean nothing but the pH, ocean acidification, we can say in that term. So what is happening? The carbonate cells, dissolution takes place. So even foraminiferans or other hydrozoans or other, particularly the cell molluscan cells or gastropods, bivalves, these all are the biology, particularly what we are getting the seafood. So these all things impact, and at the same time, the coral reef as well as the plankton, that is zooxanthellae, the association, that will be disturbed. Once it will be disturbed means entire food web will be disturbed, because we are taking the chain, because everything small organism eaten by another organism, that is eaten by another organism, that is called a link, that is a chain, that is called a food chain. This much different food chains are there, that is called a web, that is called a net, food web. So the overall food webs, why they are is destroying, because of the amount of the carbon which are emitting somewhere, and that is the ocean concern is sinking down and ocean getting acidified. Such a way the climate is impacting on the coral reefs. In addition to that, even of course in the temperature too.
Thank you. Thank you for that well-rounded discussion. I was also looking forward to know a lot more about the nuances of this region, and I'm sure you also have a lot of doubts and clarifications to make. I now open the floor for interaction.
Thanks to the panelists for taking us through a kind of a comprehensive overview on this theme. My rather a kind of a clarification is to Mr. Ibrahim Naim. Like Maldives is a country as we know, the coastal community is very well informed actually compared to all other countries, not only in this region. Like even a class 1 student will be climate aware, like the dangers, all this, it's there in their blood. So now, just wish to know, what kind of initiatives have been taken from the government? Islands are so sporadic, constructing any kind of treatment plants are very, very difficult. But still, the Maldivian waters are crystal clear. It's all that. So what are the kind of initiatives which are done by the government at the island level for pollution or waste management, solid waste management, and all like. And second, since the islands are so widely kind of not so well connected, like if at all any study is to be done, like even say for example, you may not be polluting, but other countries which are polluting the water current, they may all come to the island. Those issues are also there. Like, so is there any initiative like for citizen science initiative, like to involving the community for documenting information or documenting the biodiversity? Kind of, because to do a kind of a study in all the islands by any organization is very difficult. Like, so what kind of citizen science initiatives are there in this process? Like BOBP will be very happy to associate, and then in terms of capacity development, even to coordinate a kind of citizen science initiative to document biodiversity or monitoring pollution or chemical. I just wish to know like what is the current status.
Yeah, let me answer before I forget. For the second question, we have used a very good tool for the citizen science that is called the Greenfields Initiative. Greenfields is an international initiative where we train the trainers, and then the resorts or the island councils, they can adopt their protocols and do the monitoring of the reef. And it's like a reef check. So that is still going on in the Maldives as a citizen science initiative. And for the first question, all the activities, all the developmental activities are controlled very vigorously in the Maldives. Even if it's a very small project that has to undergo the environmental clearance and environmental screening. And my institute is the place where they get the approval. And sometimes we have even banned government projects. We have not given permit to make airports in some of the islands. We have not given permits to make ports in some parts of the islands, and which we propose changes to the treatment plant location and the outfall location. Those things are quite established in the Maldives, and if you do any environmental misbehavior, you are expected to be getting a huge fine. Whether your activity is intentional or sometimes even unintentional negligence. For example, you go and wreck on a Maldivian reef, but it may be due to some errors in the navigational equipment like GPS, but we will consider that as an unintentional, or even though it's unintentional, we consider it's a damage due to negligence, and the ship will be fined. So those things are some initiatives. And for the schools, as you have said, even from the preschool, they start learning about the environment, and they go to the beach, and they live near the beach. Everywhere it's beach and the sea. So they are sort of the cleanliness of those areas are inculcated when they grow up. But still, I think there's still more place for improvement even in our areas. And the other thing is, most of the waste that are on our beaches are actually coming through the ocean plastics. And I think it's time for us to do some joint research and try to identify the sources and the companies which these plastics belong. Because when we look at the plastics, the labels and everything, and from where it is made, and those things are still visible in most of the plastics. So I expect, actually we have a very good esteemed organization in our region called SACEP. I think the governments who are contributing to SACEP should talk with this institution and find a solution, or at least we can have a study to find out where most of the plastics are coming from. That could be a good way of addressing the issue. First, we need to find the source. I hope I answered your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very interesting inputs. We are heading to an Indian presidency of G20. So, and this is a great possibility also to show that there are great experts like you in South Asia who have great knowledge about how to implement sustainability and how climate change has a big input on this region. So, I want to ask you, what do you expect from India in the presidency of G20? What do you think has to be done by India and how to take the chances that are coming up with that?
So India's G20 presidency has a lot of priorities empaneled, and one of those is definitely sustainability initiatives. And we have been giving ample importance to these SDGs in many of our domestic policy initiatives, actually. And this has to do with domestic national policies as well. And in a way, we're also trying to decentralize many of these initiatives because integrating state government policies is also pertinent to actually having an effective uh, policy change or um, uh, ground level change to these problems that we are facing, especially in terms of fighting unsustainable growth and so on. So for India, the priorities are especially with regards to also creating the infrastructure with regards to digital economy as well. This has particular connection to sustainability also because we increasingly realize the importance of digitizing the economy since the pandemic. And that has in fact led us to uh, integrating all sectors of economy through digital architecture. And this has also to do with how we upskill the people here because you may be presented with a lot of opportunities, but if you're not in a position to take advantage of it, it really goes to waste, right? So the same goes with sustainability initiatives as well because local communities have to be empowered. They have to realize the importance of these initiatives and inculcate those little things changes into their everyday lives. So this is a priority area for India, and many of our initiatives are fine-tuned to this end. I can give you a few specific initiatives that India has taken, but I can't remember it out of my head right now. But I can talk to you after the panel if that's okay. Yeah, thank you.
The question is to Mr. Ibrahim. Could you tell us how Maldives was able to put an end to destructive fishing practices like trawl fishing?
Easy. We don't have any destructive fishing practices in the past. We have been catching one by one tuna. And to tell you the truth, if you catch fish sustainably, you will get more money for one fish. So
Yes.
it's not necessary you go and catch all the fish with per se. We catch one fish at a time, and we get premium in the European market. I think that's more important to catch less and get more money. So it's Maldives is fortunate that we don't have those troll
It was
nets.
never there.
No, never there.
Trawling
No,
was
no,
never
no.
there. All right.
For foreign vessels to come and operate in those type of practices like a person, gillnet or trolling.
This is more than a question, Camille, because we have all the countries here together. Talking about the environments, like earlier we heard that there are a lot of ports coming up in the region. So seeing the disaster of expressway that happened in Sri Lanka, the nodal pollution, how it impacted the region, Mr. Naim, don't you think it's the time that as the regional countries that we lobby at IMO to think about alternative ways of packaging for plastic, which is going to be very important, especially for noodles, because that event can repeat in the Indian Ocean again and again. And if that's the case, in which way can we work together in order to ensure that this is taken seriously, not just by IMO, but also by the industry itself? Thank you.
Yeah, I think you have raised a question as well with the statement. I think this is high time that our countries come together and make a joint oil pollution contingency plan. I heard, and I think there's a draft made by the circuit which has been circulated among our countries, but that is still on the draft stage. So the issue is very critical. So many huge vessels are being transferring through our areas, and at any time anything may go wrong, and we don't have capacity on our hand or on our countries to deal with major oil pollution incidents. So it's time that we start talking about this with IMO and other relevant organizations. I think so. Yes. Thank you.
So this is generally to the panel. So I see this very fundamental tension here, because when speaking of blue economy and its connection with climate, so you have this tension between the very basic, the economic interests of the ocean, and on the other hand you have this climate goals. And surprisingly, because you mentioned about IPCC, I think it was in the last COP where this formally this connection or this nexus between climate and ocean was formally approved by the states globally. To take an example, maybe in the case of Maldives, because you have in all these sectors of blue economy, whether it is fisheries or coastal tourism or maybe oil and gas, I don't know. So you have these foreign investments and economic interests there, and at the same time you have your climate goals, your climate policy, which is supposed to be in tune with whatever the IPCC or the COP says. So my question is very straightforward. So how do you balance these two fundamental interests? So interest of the blue economy, the economic interest and the environmental interest.
The question is very straightforward, but the answer is going to be very difficult. As you know, it's always very difficult to balance the development and the economy. We have to have a middle ground in between. If you are pursuing a development that will definitely have some impacts on the environment, and in most of the developed countries, they start talking about the environment once they achieve the development. By the time they achieve the development, the rivers and the waterways, all those places must have gone into a very bad condition, and then they start again rehabilitating that. That's what we see. But I'm not saying that we have to repeat that. We have the options of cleaner options available now, cleaner and greener options available. So when you embark developmental projects, we should always think of our climate aspirations, plus our targets should be in mind, whether your target is going net zero or whatever your target is. We have to plan it ahead, and it needs time. And my answer to the question is that has to go together. It's the balance is difficult, and we have to find a middle ground in that. Thank you.
Yeah, so we talk about cooperation in the Bay of Bengal. Now, there are environmental issues that you can tackle locally or on a national level, and then there are environmental issues, I mean, think of raising sea levels, which you best tackle internationally and globally. But now, when you look at the region, what are, in your opinion, the 2 or 3 issues that are best tackled on a regional level? And do you see initiatives on a regional level already? So what are the 1 or 2 easy wins to drive that regional cooperation to protect the environment?
Yeah, I think I have the opportunity of working in the Bay of Bengal large marine ecosystem program, for that rain for like 5-6 years back. Now the phase one is over, and under that, a transboundary diagnostic analysis was carried out in which we have identified major issues in the Bay of Bengal large marine ecosystem. And there's also another document which is prepared by the BOBLME, that is the strategic action program. Now the BOBLME is waiting for its second phase. In the second phase, the identified actions on the set will be implemented, and the process of preparing the transboundary diagnostic analysis and the strategic action program was very rigorous, and those two documents will be of very big help if you think of doing anything in the Bay of Bengal, because a lot of workshops were held and a lot of people were involved in that. So I think that work we should always keep in mind, that there has been a lot of work done in the Bay of Bengal regarding this, and I still find it very hard that any action or any activity in the Bay is coordinated, or people in one or two countries working together collectively. That thing still, I think, not in existence. We need to work more closely to achieve common goals, because still most of the countries work in alone, or maybe one or two countries may try to work, but as my colleague from Bhutan was saying today, it's taking too long time and the outcomes are not very positive. So we have to work more and more on this to achieve something that can be shown to others. Thank you.
All these ocean aspects, three satellite which has sent. So this is particularly much more concern on this Indian Ocean as well as our, the Pacific and all aspects, because the climate, it is the global, that is, it is not in the regional. So the global level, that much importance is there. As one of my, I think the speaker colleague has been asked one more question, that lady, and yes, that is correct. What you have asked for that regarding that, commitment of the Prime Minister Modi ji. Yes, that's as he has been promised that by 2070. So we have been neutral. We have to do that. Before that, what we are doing, that importance giving this Ministry of Earth Sciences from the Indian side, or Ministry of Forestry. So first, ocean-based services and ocean-based management. So based on that, what we have to do, some particular areas we have taken up, coral reefs, mangroves, seabeds, and other, if we have huge resources. So based on that, what we want to do is that how much amount of carbon we have to sequester in that particular area, either in hectare or something. Now the first step what we are doing is that in the forestry side, we are enhancing first of all our productivity of the mangrove ecosystem. So that what it can do is that whatever emissions is going at least on the local side, our side region, so it is taking off this carbon from the atmosphere. That is a positive mechanism or positive feedback. Another one, for this we have done in this our region, particularly Pulikatu Lake. This is one of the highly salt elsewhere in the world. So this area, 1 year we have done study that lake more than 90 or 100 ppt parts per thousand. Typical ocean salinity is 35 ppt. So what I want to say is that, so which is the system we have taken, how much amount of carbon is going up, or as is a sinking mechanism or source. So this is that, the tracking is the sinking, the amount of carbon. So all systems, it not be the same source or sink or something. So what I want to say is that as per the carbon budgets, or as per that neutrality aspects, climate change aspect, Indian government is much more prone about. As one of that sir you asked that regarding that the collaboration or what importance. Recently, the ocean secretary particularly concentration about that what we have sent that satellite in the US as well as our Bhutan. That satellites also there in our ISRO have been around more than dozen they have sent out overall. So these all concerned about this fiscal potential zone, which have that we have to give in to that knowledge to the people. Immediately we have to send the messages, latitude and longitudes. Then these people will go and catch the fishes. The temperature, salinity, chlorophyll. Based on these three parameters, we can find out the particular location where the particular font is there, FONT font, that is called based on the salinity temperature gradient differences. So accordingly, we have to use this knowledge and to benefit other countries like either Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Pakistan or Bangladesh or whatever countries getting benefits from that. Another one is the deep ocean mission. We are also doing that much more in the deeper region. What we are doing, the not only the coastal side but also deeper side. In the deep ocean mission, whatever the resources are there, whether the managed nodules or whatever has been expressed, these are all things. So that knowledge we need to know, and that aspect we are doing. So many aspects actually Indian government has been noticed that pollution, acidification, deoxygenation, or deep sea mining, or all aspects we are giving prioritize in this area, particularly as far as concerned in the Bay of Bengal section or basin.
Thank you, panelists. Thank you for the questions, audience. We have about 10 minutes to wrap up. Before that, let me just conclude by capturing what two of our excellent speakers have so far deliberated. Dr. Naidu have taken us through scientific explanation of many of the phenomena that is happening right now in Bay of Bengal and in the region at large, and gave us a thorough understanding of why it's happening and what is the importance of looking at these data scientifically and how that would feed into policy recommendations in future. While Mr. Naeem, from an experiential level of understanding, has also taken us through Maldives' perspective and the region's perspective of various issues like trawling, plastic debris, as well as sea lane intrusion, sea level rising, and many such conversations actually lead to changes in the very nitty-gritties of policies, and as any conference is aimed to do. I thank everyone and I hand over the proceedings to the host.
Thank you, Sharon, Dr. S.A. Naidu, and Mr. Ibrahim Naeem, for bringing us so articulately the importance surrounding environmental sustainability in the Bay of Bengal region. I'm sure it has given us all something to ponder over and work towards. At this moment, I kindly request Dr. Carsten Klein to hand over the mementos to our esteemed panel. Our panelist, Dr. S.A. Naidu, our moderator, Sharon Toshi, our panelist, Dr. S.A. Naidu, and Mr. Ibrahim Naeem.